Recording in progress.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. It looks like most everybody has signed in. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dee Marsh, and I am the Communications and Outreach Coordinator for Brewster Conservation Trust. The Brewster Conservation Trust was founded in 1983. It's a private land trust by a group of volunteer trustees. Today, we have 16 volunteer trustees who work to raise private funds and grant monies to purchase and preserve land in Brewster for forever. We preserve land for lots of reasons, but for open space is number one, and to protect water would be also another reason we protect land in Brewster. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have Aubrey. I should have asked you how to pronounce your name. Paolino, you'll have to pronounce it for me.
That was great.
From the Cape Cod Mosquito Control Project. And I'm going to turn it over to Aubrey.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. As Dee said, I'm Aubrey. I'm an entomologist at Cape Cod Mosquito Control Project. And we are one of 11 organized mosquito control districts and projects in the state. This is a map of ours, which is all of Barnstable County in blue, and then the other 10 through the state. We were actually the first organized mosquito control project in Massachusetts. We were founded in 1928, and we are a quasi-state agency. So we're overseen by the State Reclamation and Mosquito Control Board, which is within the Department of Agriculture. But we're funded locally by all of the 15 towns in Barnstable County through their cherry sheet deductions. So under a state agency, but funded locally by our member towns. And we were founded with the goal to manage mosquito populations for the comfort and health of residents and visitors in Barnstable County. And that's something that was very recognized when we were first established and continues to be the importance of managing mosquitoes for our summer tourism, and also because mosquitoes present a threat to public health. They're actually the most deadly animals in the world. So globally, there's about 700,000 deaths a year attributed to mosquito-borne illness. And here in Massachusetts, the two that we're most concerned about are West Nile virus and Eastern Equine Encephalitis, or EEE. And there's a lot of different kinds of mosquitoes. Worldwide, there's over 3,000 different species of mosquitoes, 176 species in the US. Massachusetts has about 51, and according to our records, we have collected 33 different species of mosquito here on Cape Cod. And these 6 ones are mosquitoes we do find here. So up close, some of them are really pretty, stripes and scales, and they're a really diverse group. But they're all insects, so in the class Insecta, so they have 6 legs, a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. They're in the order of flies, true flies, so like house flies, fruit flies, mosquitoes. So something that distinguishes flies is that they have one set of membranous wings, and then their hind wings are modified. They're halteres, so they're little protrusions. You can't really see them unless you look close, so it looks like they have just 2 wings. And they're in the family Culicidae. And so mosquitoes can be distinguished from other flies morphologically because they have scales on their wings, and they also have elongated sucking mouth parts. So male and female mosquitoes get their energy from plant nectar. And actually, male mosquitoes do not ever bite or feed on blood. So every single time you've ever been bitten by a mosquito, it's been a female mosquito. And that's a really fun fact. Next time you're out somewhere and you swat one on you, you'll be able to tell it's a female. And they need this blood meal for egg development. So they get their nutrition from plant nectar, plant carbohydrate sources, and then they take blood from us or another animal to get the protein to develop their eggs. And males and females can also be distinguished based on their antennae. So male antennae is plumose, so it's feathery, the picture on the left, and then female mosquito antennae are less feathery looking. And so, again, the adult mosquitoes, they have scales on the wings, which can be hard to see unless you're looking under magnification. But they have that proboscis, which is the piercing, sucking mouth part. And there's a couple insect species, especially around here, that are frequently confused for mosquitoes. The first is a non-biting midge. So that's the picture here on the left. And then compared to a mosquito, if you look at their mouth parts, you can see the non-biting midge doesn't have that long proboscis, sort of like curls under. And they also tend to hold their front legs sort of forward, so they could almost look like two sets of antennae. They're about the same size as mosquitoes, but they won't bite you. They're non-biting midge. They're totally harmless. The other thing we often get calls about are the crane flies. So sometimes people call and say they have a monster mosquito, a giant mosquito. A lot of times it's a crane fly. So crane flies have really long legs. They'll come in your house a lot of times and sort of like sit on the walls. If you touch them, the legs tend to fall off. But you can see a little bit in this picture. They also don't have those piercing, sucking mouth parts. Their wings don't have scales. Also totally harmless, not going to hurt you. So mosquitoes undergo complete metamorphosis, so similar to moths and butterflies. If you look at the illustration on the left, you can see there's a big physical difference in each life stage. So the larva is very different morphologically, and the niche it occupies compared to the adult versus something like a grasshopper, which hatches and it's sort of like a mini grasshopper and they keep getting bigger. So adult mosquitoes, of course, are terrestrial. They're on land, flying around, but immature mosquitoes are aquatic and they need to develop in water. So ideally, we try to target these immature stages for control before they're adults that can fly around and bite. So take care of the problem before it can even bite you. So an adult female mosquito will mate and then take a blood meal, and then she lays her eggs on or near standing water. Here's one way some species do that, and it's an egg raft. So this mosquito is gluing a couple hundred eggs together, and that's going to float on the surface of the water. And when she lays them, they're white, but they quickly turn dark, kind of like a little seed. Maybe you can, if you look really closely, you can see them sometimes floating on the top of water. So that's like 200 baby mosquitoes all glued together, and these eggs will hatch in a few days. So she lays them, a few days later they hatch. Some species, however, lay their eggs singly. So some will go on the inside of an artificial container or a natural container, like a tree hole or like a plant that holds water. And they'll actually glue their eggs inside of there above the water line. And then when it fills, probably from rain or someone's sprinkler, those eggs will hatch and the larvae will develop. And then there's also some species that lay their eggs on soil near water, or where the soil might become flooded. So for our saltwater and brackish species, those adult females, they'll actually go lay their eggs just in the soil around the marsh edges. And they can stay dormant for years until tide or storm or rain. It's flooded at the right time of year, and then they'll hatch and you get a bunch of immature mosquitoes. And those are our larvae. So eggs hatch either within a few days or years into larvae. And this is what they look like. They're sometimes called wigglers. So they are mobile. They sort of they hang out at the surface of the water to breathe air from the surface. But if you like cast a shadow or disturb the water, they'll wiggle down to the bottom They swim around and they eat organic material in the water. They have mouth brushes and they just sort of go through and scoop up little bits of organic matter. And so they have 4 instars. So they hatch from the egg and then they molt 3 times, each time getting bigger. So they're really small when they first hatch. And then by the time they're 4th instar, they're visible. And then they turn into pupae. So this is what pupae look like. They're sort of comma shaped. They have like a big head and a tail. Sometimes they're called tumblers because the larvae wiggle in the water, and then these, if you disturb them, they'll sort of tumble around in the water column. And this is a short stage, so they aren't feeding. It's really just the transition between larva and adult. And so then these pupae, the adults will emerge and then continue the life cycle. And the stage that mosquitoes overwinter also depends on the species. So right now we have mosquito eggs in our soil just waiting for spring. We have larvae in places like cedar swamps. They go in the crypts under the trees in that water, and they'll actually be able to survive all winter under there. We don't have any species that overwinter as pupae just because they're not feeding, so they wouldn't have the energy to get through the winter. But we also have some species that overwinter as adults, and they just go, they'll hang out in a barn or your basement or a cave and just wait. So what we really try to do is target these mosquitoes before they're adults, flying around and before they're going to bite you. And we're really focused on this water management and then larvicide applications. So our crews, we have 27 full-time staff and we work year-round. Right now we're in our winter work, so we do a lot of water management, and that involves keeping these our ditches moving. So here we go. So here's one of our crews out there. So this time of year they're going out, they're using chainsaws, brush saws, just rakes. So they're clearing ditches, and they're also cutting access paths so they can access mosquito larval habitat in the spring. So they're out there right now, they're increasing water, they're keeping the water flowing. They're also unclogging pipes. Here's another photo. So they cut everything back before it grows back in the spring. And here's an example of unclogging a pipe. So they'll get just blocked with dirt and leaves and keeping that clear so the water's flowing. So if the water's flowing, the mosquitoes won't be able to develop. They need really stagnant water because they're not strong swimmers. So in the summer, if this is flowing, they'll all get sort of washed away and die. Also, by keeping it open, we can increase access of fish, so they'll eat mosquito larvae. And so really just trying to keep all the water connected and moving. And so we do this in freshwater, brackish water, and salt marsh. So this is a low ground pressure machine. We actually have a new one. I don't have a photo yet, but it's very low ground pressure, so you can drive it onto the marsh to clear out the ditches that are there, and it spreads the soil very thinly over the rest of the marsh. So that's what we're going to be doing until April, and then come April, we start our larval surveillance. So this is a dipper. It's about a cup and a half of water, and so this is from a salt marsh. So our field crews go out, you scoop it up. This is hundreds of mosquito larvae, all the little dashes in the cup. So our crews we have sites that are mapped throughout the Cape, both freshwater and saltwater, and our crews regularly visit them and check for larvae. So if there is, they will apply larvicide. So here's one of our employees dipping for larvae in a salt marsh, and in his backpack he has the larvicide. So they're all licensed pesticide applicators, and the products we use are targeted pretty specifically for mosquitoes. So mainly we use BTI, which is Bacillus thuringiensis subspecies israelensis, and it's a bacterium. It's derived from a soil bacterium. And so how it works is if we find larvae, we'll spray it in there, and they'll eat it in their process of just kind of gobbling up everything in the water. And then it binds to a pretty specific receptor in their midgut, and it causes it to rupture, and then they'll die. So we use that to specifically target mosquitoes. We also, of course, that won't work if they're fourth instar larvae or pupae because they won't be feeding. So that's why we try to check our sites regularly and often. But if we do have pupae, we can use a surface oil. It's a mineral oil. You can spray it on top and it disrupts the surface tension so they'll drown, basically. So yeah, so we go out, check those sites, and then we want to kill them before they're able to bite. And we also do that in storm drains. So you might see us out in towns. Each of our crews knows where storm drains to hit are, and we'll treat those, and that will go every 30 days or so. We also do trapping for adult mosquitoes. So June through September, we have long-term trap locations throughout the Cape where we set traps, and this lets us quantify the number of mosquitoes. So if we see a big change from year to year, if we're seeing different species, we'll know where to look for where they're coming from. And it also allows us to test for the presence of viruses. One of the kinds of traps we use is a light trap. So this targets our adult female mosquitoes that want to take a blood meal. This is the picture. At the top, there's it's a little cooler, and we get dry ice and we put it in there. And then as it sublimates, it releases carbon dioxide. So that's one of the things that attracts mosquitoes to an animal to bite. And then there's a black lid there to keep it sort of dry. And under there is also a light bulb. So produces a little bit of heat. That's also attractive. So the idea is that the female mosquito is looking for something to bite, fly up under that lid, and then there's a fan, and they get sucked down into that net. So we leave these out for about 24 hours, and you can catch a lot of mosquitoes if you have a lot in the area. So this past summer, we caught over 5,000 mosquitoes in one of our traps. We also have gravid traps. So gravid female is one that's ready to lay eggs. And so this is targeting adult female mosquitoes that have taken that blood meal and they're looking for somewhere to lay their eggs. So for this, there's a plastic tray, and we brew water in garbage cans with hay. So it gets kind of stinky and nice and organic mattery. We put it in there, and then there's this toolbox. It has a pipe that goes like near the surface of the water, and there's a fan inside. So when they go to the surface of the water, they get sucked up, and then there's a little box, that little net in there. And then we'll come back the next day and take those. And so this will catch fewer mosquitoes than the light trap, but it's more focused on species that are likely to transmit West Nile virus. And it's also, with the light trap, you could be getting a female mosquito that has never taken a blood meal, and so she won't be infected potentially with the virus, whereas this is really targeting one that has at least had one blood meal to produce her eggs. And then this is the most low-tech of our traps, but it's a resting box. So it's really just a plywood box painted black and brown. And so this is targeting our adult female mosquitoes that have taken a blood meal and are looking for like a shady place to rest. So after they take the blood meal, mosquitoes look for somewhere cool and out of the sun that they can rest and digest and produce the eggs. So they'll actually just fly into this box and hang out there. So I come around and I flip it over so they can't get out, and I have a tank of CO2 to knock them out, and then I'll just sort of pick them out of the box. And this we use to target one of our vectors for Eastern equine encephalitis. So that catches a higher proportion of those mosquitoes. So then once we get all these mosquitoes from different kinds of traps, we bring them back to the lab and we kill them by freezing them in a freezer. And so then I look at them under a microscope and sort them into their different species. They can be visually distinguished, and then I count them all. So I count all of what comes from a trap, so it's changing throughout time or across the Cape. If there's certain spots we're getting certain kind of mosquito. And then I'll take a subsample and pool them for submission to the state public health laboratory. So we send a subsample of what we catch, things that are likely to be potential vectors for West Nile virus or Tripoli, and bring them to the state lab, and they test them there. And so that's how we get data like this. So this is the number of positive mosquito samples by year in Barnstable County. So West Nile virus is the green bar, and Eastern equine encephalitis is the yellow bar. So as you can see, it varies year to year. We found the most mosquito samples of West Nile virus in 2018. That was 27 of our samples. And Tripoli, we found the most 2019. We had 15 positive samples for Eastern equine encephalitis. So the number of mosquitoes we find positive varies by year, but most years we do find some. So there's always sort of that risk. We're never totally risk-free here. So this is the West Nile virus transmission cycle. So the center box, that's our mosquito vector. So it actually acquires this virus from infected birds. So they're the amplifier host. So a mosquito bites an infected bird, and then it can transmit it to another bird, and so on. But if a mosquito that fed on an infected bird bites a person or a horse or another mammal, it can transmit the virus. But people don't produce enough virus then to be able to infect another mosquito. So you need to be bitten by a mosquito that had previously taken a blood meal on an infected bird. And here in Massachusetts, Culex pipiens, which is our common house mosquito, and Culex restruens are the two species that are our primary vectors. And they do really well living around people. They like high organic matter in their water, their larvae do. And we tend to find them more in urban, suburban areas. The symptoms of West Nile virus can really range. So 8 out of 10 people infected don't have any symptoms. 1 in 5 people will have flu-like symptoms. So chills, body aches, diarrhea, things like that. And then 1 in 150 will develop serious symptoms where it can affect your central nervous system. And that's more likely in people over the age of 60. And of those that get central nervous system involvement, it's fatal in about 1 in 10 cases. And here in Massachusetts, your risk is greatest in the summer through the fall. In the United States, West Nile virus was first detected in 1999 in New York. And then the next year, in 2000, we found it in Massachusetts. And as you can see in the map on the right, from 2000 to 2020, we get most of the cases in Massachusetts in Middlesex County, because again, these are mosquitoes that do really well in urban and suburban environments. But we have had some human cases here in Barnstable County. And then if you just look nationally, in 2021, it was found across the United States. And then in Barnstable County, this is the number of mosquito samples. Again, this is the same graph as before, but just to show you that every year we find some years we find quite a bit more than others. Eastern equine encephalitis is our other arbovirus of concern. So in this case, birds are also the amplifying host. And we have the vector that will spread it in the bird population, which here is Culicida melanura. We find these in our cedar swamps especially. So they're the larvae that will develop in the crypts under the trees. And then if they take a blood meal and infected bird, they can spread it to more birds. And then for Tripoli, usually those won't bite people. So often there's a bridge vector. So that's a mosquito species that'll transmit it to people or horses or other mammals. But again, people don't produce enough virus to infect a new mosquito. And here, our most prominent bridge vector is Coquilitidia perturbans, sometimes called the cattail mosquito. They're kind of shaggy looking when they're adults, but it's really interesting. The larvae and pupae, this photo on the left, they do breathe air from the surface, but they do it through the roots of aquatic vegetation. So they're kind of snorkeling down there. They'll pierce the vegetation and just stay there and breathe without having to come to the surface. So they're often pretty hard to find as larvae, and also to access to treat it with larvicide. The symptoms for Eastern equine encephalitis also vary, although they're often more severe than that for West Nile virus. So you can be asymptomatic or have symptoms, flu-like symptoms, but if it develops into encephalitis, it's often fatal. So if Eastern equine encephalitis does develop into encephalitis in a person, in a third of the cases, it's fatal, and people who do survive this type of infection often have very serious lifelong symptoms. In the United States, it's found mainly in the Atlantic, Gulf Coast, and Great Lakes states. And some in Massachusetts since at least 1938, but probably before that. And for Tripoli, most cases are reported from Plymouth and Bristol counties, as you can see on this map, and that's because they have big areas of swamps that these mosquitoes that transmit it love to be in. And knock on wood, so far we haven't had any human cases reported from Barnstable County. And so nationally, you can see these are the neuroinvasive disease cases, so ones that are serious. And in Massachusetts, we've had 26 since 2011. Well, from 2011 to 2020. And in Barnstable County, this is we find it in our mosquito samples much more sporadically than West Nile virus. So there's often gaps of a number of years, but we are looking and we do find it. So we always encourage caution. And so because of that, we always encourage personal protection. And there's a few steps you can take. The first being use an EPA approved repellent anytime you're outdoors, especially in the summer and early fall. And so it's not just DEET, there's a number of active ingredients you can use. And so I encourage everyone to look this up on the EPA website. They have a nice tool you can use if you just Google EPA, find the right repellent for you, takes you to their website. And so you can put in how long you would like it to last, if you want protection from mosquitoes and ticks or just mosquitoes, if there's just a certain active ingredient you're interested in or a company, and then you can look up a list of all the products available that meet your criteria. And it's also very important once you do purchase a repellent, read the instructions on the package and make sure you're following directions and reapplication timing.
Hey, Aubrey.
Yes.
I'm just going to cut in real quick if you don't mind.
No.
One thing that I just want to remind people, if you have, I see one question in the chat box, so we're going to do questions at the end of your session. So if there's other questions, you can write them in the Q&A down below on your menu bar. You can press Q&A or you can use the chat, either one. And also just letting folks know that I'll share that website and any other resources that Aubrey gives us after the Zoom. I'll send it out in an email tomorrow.
Thanks. Yeah. So wear your repellent. You can also, we would suggest wearing long pants, long sleeves, socks, so just not having a lot of exposed skin. Also, you don't want it to be too tight. So even if you're wearing long leggings, it's so tight and thin that the mosquito could just bite you right through it. And we also often suggest long, loose, light colored clothing because it tends to be less attractive than dark colored clothing to mosquitoes. The other thing to do is prevent mosquitoes from coming into your house. So early in the season, check your windows and screen doors for any holes or gaps and patch them before we have adult mosquitoes flying around. And then a big one is removing standing water around your house to prevent mosquitoes from breeding. So we talked about how important stagnant water is. And here's an example. I found this last summer. It's a wheelbarrow on the left, and on the right, it's zoomed in. And I circled one of the larvae, but all of those other dashes are also mosquito larvae. So that's thousands of mosquitoes that within a few days will be flying around and biting. And really all I did was dump it out and put it upside down. So by just dumping out that wheelbarrow, killed thousands of mosquitoes. There's other places that are great to look. So pet bowls, bird baths, kiddie pools, those are things you're going to want water to be in. But they're also containers or just surface of standing water. So we recommend that anything that holds water more than 4 or 5 days is something you're going to want to regularly tip out and then wipe it down so you kill any of the eggs that they might have laid just along the side of your bird bath. Also, as I showed you, wheelbarrows, buckets, boats, those things just love to collect water. Also clogged gutters. So you might be looking around your yard and you don't see any standing water, but it's actually above your head in the gutters. And also swimming pools. If the pool is properly maintained, it won't be an issue for having immature mosquitoes, but if it's neglected, it absolutely will. It's just a natural pond at that point. Also tires, if you have, it's either like junk, trash outside or a tire swing, they get caught, water gets caught inside the tires and it's dark and nice and warm. Mosquitoes love that. So if you have a tire swing, drill a hole or a couple holes in the bottom so the water will drain out. Also kids' toys or anything with like little compartments and trash. So here's a canoe and some clogged gutters, and that collects leaf litter. It's nice and nutritious for those immature mosquitoes, but not what you want to have around your house. Also trash. So this is a picture I took on the left, and I circled like a plastic iced coffee cup or soda cup. Those are great for mosquitoes, not for us. They're just out in the woods and they fill up with rainwater. You can get a bunch of mosquitoes in there. Something as small as a bottle cap can hold enough water and be enough room for mosquitoes to develop. They're really sneaky. Or like chip bags, if they're opened up, filled with water. And then of course this tire pile, if I see something like that immediately, I'm like, that's gonna be a problem for mosquitoes. A pool, if it looks like this, you're probably gonna find mosquitoes in there. Or a kiddie pool like this. This was inflated and clean, but it deflated a little and then it rained and there were mosquitoes coming from here. And then you could think you're doing a great job covering something. So this is probably like a fountain that's not working. They covered it, but there's water accumulating on the top of the tarp. So if you cover a boat or something like that, make sure, or a pool even, try to make sure it's as taut as possible and it's not going to be collecting any water on the surface. And that, rain barrels. So if you do have a rain barrel, you need to really make sure there's no access for adult mosquitoes to get in there and lay eggs. So you can put like window screening over any of the holes or outlet valves to prevent that. Really, anything that can hold water, even a little bit of water, after it rains or after your sprinklers go, take a walk around and dump everything out, try to keep it upside down, move it somewhere else because you can get rid of a lot of mosquitoes this way. And then lastly, we'll often recommend people avoid being outside during dawn and dusk if there is arbovirus in the area, because that's the time when a lot of the species that transmit them are most active in feeding. But of course, all day, there are mosquitoes out, so we really encourage people to practice as many personal protective measures as they can. And then if you have a larger problem or you have standing water on your property that's not easy to address, you can always give us a call or visit our website at ccmcp.net. Give us a call, send me an email. We do go out and our crews will check out an area. There's no additional charge for this. We're funded locally, so we'll go out and see what we can do and treat your standing water, try to unclog something or tell you dump out that wheelbarrow. But we're always here if you have any questions or want us to come take a look at anything. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That was really informative, Aubrey. I learned a lot about mosquitoes that I didn't know, and I really loved all the preventative measures you just discussed, especially the standing water. I imagine you drive down the street and just see standing water all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'm always somewhere.
Very hyper aware of it. So we have a few questions. The first one, going back to that BPI that you talked about and the oil, asking if it affects other bugs or fish, larvae or pupa. And then also, that's the first question. And the second question was my same question. Were the higher 2018 numbers due to the weather differences, such as warmer or wetter?
Okay, so the products we use, BTI, it's really specific for mosquitoes and a couple closely related species. So not at the rates we apply it, but you could use it against black fly larvae, but of course we're not applying it in any like streams where they would be. And it also does work against chironomid midges, so non-biting midges, but it's really specific to those species. And at the rates we apply it, it's really targeting mosquitoes. And so weather will affect arbovirus rates. It's not hard and fast or necessarily direct, because a lot of it is an infected bird in the area. So anything that we're going to have more mosquitoes interacting with more birds, or a bird coming from somewhere infected, potentially does. So yes, but not in a way, unfortunately, we can predict with very precisely.
Yeah, that 2018 number was just so much higher.
Yeah, and that was true throughout the state. It was just, especially with Tripoli, it does seem to come in 2 or 3 year cycles. So we were expecting potentially we could, or throughout the state, we'd find a bit of Tripoli in the mosquito populations this year, but fortunately that didn't happen.
Gotcha. Okay. And then one more question I'm just going to read here. It says, great presentation. Thank you. For garden ponds, what is the best strategy to avoid increasing mosquito population? Should we have plenty of goldfish or other fish to eat the larva, or should we circulate the water regularly with a pump or add treatments? If we're using a pump so we don't waste water, how often does it need to circulate the pond or water to make sure we're eliminate the larva, like once a week, twice a week, etc.?
Yeah, so you could do a pump. If you put fish in the pond, it will take care. It should take care of the problem. I would say if you have an ornamental pond and you can and are willing to add fish, they'll eat the larvae. If you don't, you can buy dunks of BTI in like a hardware store. Just make sure you follow the packaging instructions, or you can have the pump circulating. I mean, you probably want it to be circulating fairly frequently. So if you're concerned about using electricity, I would say go with fish if you'd like to have fish.
Okay, let's see. Follow-up question on that same line of questioning. What if birds or fish eat the larva or the pupae treated with the BTI or the oil?
Oh yeah, no, it shouldn't be harmful. Birds won't, so when they die, they'll just kind of like sink to the bottom. So fish or other insects could eat them. It wouldn't harm them.
Great, thank you so much. We don't have any other questions, so thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. And like I said, I'll follow up with you. We can share some of these resources with these folks. So have a good night, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye.